That's a lot of people. Yeah. Hope you've had nice lunch. Can you hear me well at the back? Is it okay? Kind of? Okay. If you need me to shout, just do something and I'll speak louder. Okay? Or if I speak too fast, sometimes I speak too fast. You can do something or throw something at me and it's fine. I'll get it. Okay? My name is Paulo, as you might have seen in the program. And I'm one of the partners at Troika. Have you heard of it? Yes. Oh, that's good. That's good. We are a consultancy firm, but we work a lot with teachers, with schools, and publishing houses to help people develop. So we have all sorts of development courses. We write course books. We make coffee. So you name it, yeah? And I really wanted to have this discussion with you today so that we can talk about innovation in language teaching. Because we hear a lot about innovation and what innovation is, etc. But we don't talk about it very much. So we are going to be here for about an hour. I know we are a very large group. I hope you don't have to teach groups this large. Do you? This big? Yeah, that's a bit scary. But we are going to try and keep this as interactive as possible, okay? So I might jump through some of you, so don't hate me for that. This is our agenda for today. We are going to try and define what innovation is. Then we'll be talking a little bit about learners, because they kind of matter to what we do, I think. And then we'll be talking a little bit about trends, things that are happening in the market that they might be relevant to our classroom practice. And finally, I'm going to share with you some of my own mistakes and things that I tried and they didn't really have a very happy ending, so that you can kind of, try to learn from my own mistakes. The first thing we are going to try to do is, how many of you have got a mobile phone on you right now? Please raise your hand. Okay, that's a good show of hands. How many of you have got internet working right now? Brilliant. Okay, so I'm going to share a website with you, and I'm going to ask you to type this website onto your mobile browser, okay? Can you try and do that for a second? This is the website. Can you see at the back? If you can't, I'm going to... No, okay. So that's bit.ly/innovation_SBS. And I'm doing that on my phone as well. Yeah? Okay, so if you did it, you should see something more or less like this. It's like a blank screen, yeah? Can you see a plus icon here at the bottom? Yeah? And can you see that you have two questions at the top of the screen? Yeah? How would you describe what innovation is and what makes something innovative? Can I ask you to think for 1 minute or so, and then add your contributions? And then as people type in their contributions, you'll be able to see what everyone else is sharing as well, okay? Mm-hmm. You can like and add comments if you want. Get it? Yeah, okay. See lots of things popping up on my screen. Okay, once you've finished, can I ask you to tell the people around you what your definition of innovation is? Yeah, and ask what their definition of innovation also is. Did it work?
this is an innovation I've never seen. Oh, damn. Okay.
And then you'll be able to see what everyone else is. Do you like it? Yeah? No? That's it? Yeah. If you click done, then you'll be able to see what everyone else is writing. Yeah? Okay, did you tell the person sitting next to you what innovation is? Yes? Oh, sorry. I'm just listening. Just listening.
When it helps.
True. Definitely. We have lots of innovations that are not that innovative.
It's just fashion. We can go.
We'll be talking a lot about that. Okay. There are lots of interesting definitions that you've written. This link is going to be open for after the session. So if you want to go back and go through the definitions that people have shared, please feel free. There are some very interesting definitions that you've written. I think innovation is doing something new, never done before. Do you agree? Yeah? Something brand new or a different approach for something that we were already used to doing. Make sense? Okay. Don't be afraid to try something new, regardless of what traditional teaching tells you to do. Very interesting. Innovation is a new way of something. Doing something... Oh, God. You're still writing. It doesn't stop. Okay. Upgrading. Upgrading, that's quite innovative, actually. To try to teach old things in a new and different way. How do you feel about that? Yeah? There are lots of possible definitions for innovation. As you can see from your contributions, I've got like an endless list of different definitions. But when we look at literature, and a lot of people, they write specifically about what innovation is. There are a couple of definitions which have really stood the test of time. They've been around for a very long time, and I really like them. This is the first one. Innovation is staying relevant. It hasn't really got to do with anything new. Yeah. How many of you have got vacuum cleaners at home? Vacuum cleaners. Do you know how long vacuum cleaners have existed? No? Give me a guess. Roughly 100 years. Yeah. How many of you use paper clips? Good. Do you tend to think of paper clips as something really innovative? No, but it is highly relevant, right? Especially if you're like, just a simple act of binding paper together. So because paper clips and vacuum cleaners are relevant, they are quite innovative. They stay relevant. They've stood the test of time. So you have very simple things which can be highly innovative. So you don't need to have something that's groundbreaking or that's incredibly fascinating so that you can call it innovative. Sometimes it can be something as simple as a paperclip. A second definition that I really like is turning an idea into a solution that adds value from a customer's perspective. In other words, you are doing something that's slightly different from what everyone else is doing, and you're adding value to your students' perspective, right? Because, we have to remember that our students, they are also our clients. Make sense? Comments, reactions. Can I ask you to tell the person sitting next to you what you think about these two quotes? 10 seconds. Go ahead. Okay. 10 seconds. It was really 10 seconds. Otherwise, Priscilla was at the back. She would throw something at me to shut up because I've got just an hour. What do you think? Would anyone like to share a thought or two?
I think it's to customize your class according to your clients or your students' needs.
Well, what's your name? Thijs. Very good point. Would anyone else like to share something? Okay, one at a time. Okay, that works. That works as well. Now, I don't know if you agree with me. Maybe you don't. But there is one thing that I always think whenever I observe lessons. And I've made a business out of observing lessons and observing teachers. I look quite young to some people, but that's all Botox. I've been in the classroom for roughly 17 years. And yeah, that's some time. And one thing that I noticed is that classes, they haven't really changed. And technically, most classes and education in general tends to be very conservative. And whenever people think of, well, that's quite innovative, etc., and you go and you look at the list of 25 apps that you have to use in the classroom, and Kahoot this, and Pokemon Go that, etc., I don't know how you feel, but I feel pretty much like this. It's like, how do I know what's relevant, what's not relevant? Because people have been telling me that these things are very relevant and they are going to impact my teaching positively. So, are you familiar with the British Council? Yeah? Okay. As you know, or as you might know, the British Council is a not-for-profit organization. They are sponsored by the United Kingdom government, and they've got offices all around the globe. Because, you know, it's a globe, it's not flat. Yeah, according to science, it is a globe, it's not flat. I know, it's groundbreaking, yeah. Well, some things might be changing, that's true. And they've got an office in China, and they got a commission. Okay, you guys have to write a report listing the top 10 innovations in language teaching. And they have to be groundbreaking. It's like the best things that have come up in the past few years. That was written roughly 3 years ago. These are the top 10 innovations. And I'm going to comment one by one. 10 innovations that have changed English language teaching by Chia Swang Chong on the 1st of June, 2016. So that's 2.5 years ago. Digital platforms, innovative? Come on, they've been around. Yeah, but they've been around for like 20 years. At least. Online corpora. Are you familiar with the concept of corpora? Yes. Corpora is a compilation of how people speak, basically. And they put it together digitally. So if you type a word in a corpus, it will tell you how that word is actually used in texts, either spoken texts or written texts, right? Like Lingui, for example, is a very good example. It's a very informal corpus, but we've got all sorts of corpora that are, they've been released by really good universities. Most of them, some of them are actually free. Okay, that's very nice, etc. But, I mean, perhaps not that useful. We are all teachers. We don't really use corpus on a regular basis. Perhaps we should, but we haven't got the time, really. Online continuous professional development. Groundbreaking? What do you think? Come on, give me a reaction. Yeah. Yes? Okay. I don't agree, and I'm going to tell you why. The University of London has had online courses since Queen Victoria was alive. Their first distance learning course was in the 19th century. They still have courses, distance courses. They just don't use the post anymore. They use computers and smartphones because that's faster, it's more efficient, but it's not necessarily, hey, the concept is new. No, the concept is not new. The concept has existed for over 100 years. Mobile learning and bring your own device. That I agree. I think it has changed. I'm not sure we know what to do with mobile phones in the classroom yet. And bring your own device strategies, they have existed for some time, and I will say, yeah, they can be quite innovative. Online communications, for example, Skype, really innovative. What do you think? Yes, no, kind of? Perhaps in the last decades, plural. Also, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but if you're as old as I am, you might have had a pen pal. Remember the concept of pen pals? Yeah, people are saying like lovingly. It's like you actually, I mean, instead of sending WhatsApp messages and hoping for 2 ticks, you would send a letter that would eventually arrive and people would still communicate. But yeah, the concept was, it has existed for some time. Online authentic material. Okay, brilliant. But libraries have existed for the past 5,000 years. It was a bit more difficult, but it didn't mean it didn't exist. It was just more difficult. Interactive whiteboards. Okay, brilliant. That's good. Okay, I agree that can be an innovation. It can also be absolutely nothing. It depends very much on how it's used. Dogme, are you familiar with Dogme? No? Okay. So Dogme was very much inspired by the movie industry, the film industry, by a film called Dogville. And I think it's Dogville, if I'm not mistaken. And it was coined in England by a few researchers. One of them was Scott Thornbury. You might be familiar with his work. And basically what he says is, we've got too much going on in the classroom. We have too many materials. We've got too much going on. And what we need is to pay attention to our students and feed them the materials that they produce. So basically, you use a lot of students' production as a source of input for the lesson. That's all very beautiful, especially if you're able to tailor-make your materials to your students, fantastic. But I don't think that's really feasible in most teaching contexts. In my teaching context, definitely it's not. So, yeah, it could have been innovative, but if you tell an academic director that the whole school is going Dogme, he's probably going to have a heart attack. And that's not very good, because we need academic directors without having heart attacks, possibly. Student-centeredness, that's very new. It's been around since, I think, Aristotle in Greece. So I don't think it has changed English language teaching only. I mean, it might have become more prominent, especially now with the BNCC. You might have heard of the BNCC. That has changed. It is changing education. And okay, focus on critical thinking and soft skills. Okay, that's an innovation. So we have this beautiful list of 10 innovations. Out of the 10, maybe 2 or 3 items are really innovative. And you will see that most of them are somehow connected to technology. So my question to you, and I would like you to discuss this question with the colleaguinha sitting right next to you, is innovation and technology intrinsically connected? Are they the same thing? Are they different? Are they connected? What do you think? 10 seconds. Of course you can. Do you think that innovation and technology are the same thing? Are they always together? Are they always connected? Or are they separate? Okay, so what do you think? Okay. Right, let's try again. What do you think? Is innovation and technology the same thing? Are they different? No, lots of... Okay, not the same. They are connected. They are... Okay, expand.
Not just as a process, but also as a result of innovative ideas. So we can use the technology as a way of proposing new ideas and to invent new solutions to old problems.
Okay, good point. So technology can help innovation.
Yes,
Okay. But not the same. Okay, one thing can help the other, but not necessarily. Good. Someone at the back. Okay. There was a lot of talking. Someone must have an idea. I'll just embarrass myself. Put me out of my misery. No? Okay. I'm still waiting. I'll be waiting for... Okay. Someone's putting out... Oh, what's her name? Sarah. I couldn't agree more. Personally, that's my take. I find that innovation and technology, they are not the same thing. I think, as she said, what's her name? Regina. As Regina said, I think technology can help innovation because it can make life easier, faster, but sometimes it doesn't make much of a difference, or it can actually hinder innovation because we get very lazy. I'm going to propose a very quick exercise. It's individual and silent. I want you to try and remember 5 different phone numbers. I'd like you to try and remember 5 different phone numbers. Can you remember 5 phone numbers? You can. Okay. How many of you were able to do this? Please raise your hand. That's maybe 10%. That's 5% of the room. We don't have the piece of information anymore. For a number of reasons. First of all, we don't need it because our phone stores it. In the old days, we had the problem, oh, what if I lose my phone? Nowadays, it doesn't matter. Because even if you lose your phone book is still there in the cloud, somewhere, whatever the cloud is.
You know why? We don't treat people by number, just by name now.
We don't treat people by numbers, that's true. Couldn't agree more. I think also in the past, people used to share the same phone number. Nowadays, everyone will have a different number, so et cetera, et cetera. But actually, that has had a negative impact on the way we deal with numbers and on our memory as well. I don't know how you feel, but sometimes, I'm 32 right now, sometimes I feel that my 96-year-old grandmother has got a much better memory than I do. And I go, and I can barely remember what I've had for breakfast. So yeah, innovation can be helped by technology, but it can also be hindered by technology. One of the issues with technology is that it's fleshy. It's fleshy. It's usually attractive and colorful, and it's made to sell. How many of you have heard of Marie Kondo? Yeah, okay, if you haven't, look it up on YouTube and Netflix. It's this terrible, humiliating TV series in which this very short Japanese lady comes to your home and tells everything that you've been doing wrong for the past, how many years you've been alive. She's on Netflix, and she's got a couple videos on YouTube as well. And one of the things that she does, and I tried to do this on Sunday, and it was a horrible experience. She says that you've got to get all of your clothing, every single item of clothing that you own, and you have to pile up on your bed. And once the pile is over, because most of us live in a Western country with access to lots of clothing, we feel bad. Really bad, because we look at everything that we have and go, I had no idea I had so much stuff. I stopped halfway through it because I was very humiliated. I was like, I can't do this anymore. And technology is not too different. I mean, how often do you change your phone? How often do you use a new piece of technology in your classroom just because the market, and by the market I mean what your students want, the newsletter that you get, etc., just because the market tells you to. And often we look at technology and go, okay, that's very nice. I'm going to try and find something to do with this new game, rather than doing the other way around, which is, this is my lesson objective. How can I reach this better, faster, more interactively, in a nicer way? So that takes a bit of thinking. And the market... Sorry? Oh, okay. Mary Kondo, yeah. It's check her out. But the market is really powerful. And I'm not saying that technology is a bad thing. Quite the opposite. I mean, I make a living out of working with technology and education. And this is really relevant, I think. This is for Brazil. 70% of homes have access to online resources. That's a lot of people. We are talking about, if you look at this figure for 15 years ago, which is when many of us started working, that was not even half that. Maybe about 25% of people would have access to online resources. However, 79% of our students use their phones to study. That's a lot of people. So it's not just because the market wants it. It's because our students need it. They use it regardless of what we do. So we can go on playing Kahoot, which definitely, it has its uses. It's very colorful. It's highly engaging, but it doesn't add much. I mean, it's a very simple multiple choice game. The strategy is fairly simple, and it doesn't add to students' learning experience. Or we can actually look at this figure and try to think of different strategies that we can help our students study at home, for example. How do we get our students to have access to content that they wouldn't be able to have otherwise? They are already using their phones to study. They are using their phones to access podcasts. They are using their phones to find different quizzes, to do different stuff. And sometimes we are not really aware of that. Does that make sense? I know that I've bad-mouthed Kahoot, and I saw lots of faces and eyes going like, what are you talking about? And I'm not saying that I don't use Kahoot, quite the opposite. I really like it, and sorry, the computer got blocked. Now, there is one very interesting piece of, that's a lot of people, right? That's like 8 out of 10 students. But then when we look at us, all of us, do you see the clash here? So we've got 79% of our students using phones to study, but not even 50% of us, which means this side of the room, I mean, not necessarily you, but this amount of people, it's not personal, tends to really ignore the fact that technology can help our students develop. I've been trying to investigate why that's the case, and I don't have an answer. I really don't. I've been trying to investigate that for quite some time, but I've been also trying to understand why do we have such a gap, because that's a lot of people. And I think that the answer might be somewhere around here. This figure is for schools whose average is of about 50 teachers, okay? So out of 50 teachers, in each of those schools that were researched, this data is from Seciki. Seciki is it's a non-governmental organization, it's an NGO, and they research internet in Brazil, and they are like the official body responsible for all the data that exists when it comes to the internet in Brazil. And they did this piece of research, and they found out that this beautiful number, in 61% of schools, the total sum of 0 teachers were trained to use technology in the classroom. 0. It's like 0. That's not a lot. So when we see these number, and then we look at this number, we say, oh, okay, now that makes sense. I don't know how to use it, therefore, I am not going to use it. And then we get to think, okay, but I use Kahoot, or I use Pokemon Go, or I use, please tell me something that's very popular these days. That. So am I not using technology? I'm sorry, you're not, darling. That's not really using technology. That's using a game. I mean, you could be using flashcards, you could be using Realia. The effect is very much the same. It's just more attractive, and it's on a screen. But when we look at the theory of the use of technology in the classroom, that's really at the bottom. You're just replacing one thing with another. I'm going to tell you an anecdote. Do you know how old iPads are? No, iPads, they're not that old. No, iPads, they've been around for about 10 years. Yeah? 10 years or so, right? The first iPad, I think it was launched in 2009, 2010, something like this. And I used to work, that was many years ago. I used to be an academic coordinator for digital studies. So my focus was on digital pedagogy within a very large institution. Not in São Paulo, it was outside São Paulo, but they had at the time, I think, over 60,000 students. They were very big. And one day, after a meeting with the directors, I got this email. Paulo, we've decided to buy 1,200 iPads because our students need it. Please find a way to use them. Yours sincerely, boop. I was like, ah, right. So because, you know, manda quem pode, obedece quem tem juízo, I went there, bought the iPads, etc., etc. I found a way to use those iPads. Nothing really extraordinary, especially because at the time, it wasn't, I mean, people didn't really know how, touch technology was still beginning. They were not highly efficient. They were iPads 1. There wasn't much that you could do. They didn't even have cameras. And then, fast forward a few years. They bought 1,200 iPads. What have they got now? They've got 1,200 very expensive chopping boards. You can use them to chop onions, carrots, whatever. Because that doesn't work anymore. I mean, that's old. That's you know, old hardware. People tend to focus on hardware and on the game, on the device, etc., but not on the pedagogy that's behind that. So if you don't have a strategy for that, it's cool. Yeah, it's really cool. You can make really nice pieces of advertising with that, but it's not really going to impact learning. So when you look at this figure and we see that teachers, they don't develop really in the use of technology, we go, okay, now it makes sense. That's why you have people actually using Kahoot instead of trying to find strategies to get, do you use WhatsApp? Yeah. Yes, why? It's faster than? But why do you use it? To communicate with whom?
Because everybody does.
Okay. But why do you communicate? I'm asking, like, these are genuine questions. To do things. Good. Why don't we do that with our students? I mean, I'm not telling you to use WhatsApp with the students, but why don't we get to find strategies to help our students communicate faster, easier, or put an adverb there using technology? Isn't that what technology is for, mostly? You do? Fantastic. Very good. I don't want to use WhatsApp with my students. But I use other things. Instead of WhatsApp, I tend to use... Have you heard of Edmodo? Yes? If you haven't, check it out. Edmodo is very much like Facebook, but a Facebook for education. So it has a lot of safety layers that will help you have better control over what's happening there. My thing with WhatsApp is because I don't want to share my personal number with students. I don't have private students. It's too informal, yeah. And I think professional things, they should be kept very professional. And through Edmodo or a number of other things, you share like a nickname or something else, and then you can communicate with students, but with boundaries. I think boundaries are important, right? So, yeah. I think oftentimes when we get to use mobile phones in class, that's what happens, right? I mean, you get the phones in class, students, they get dragged to the phones, and then we get to see that there is a major downside to using technology. And that number of teachers, you know, the 51% of teachers that will not use technology in class, often they've tried and they've given up because of this. They don't see an impact. Also, in many cases, in certain states, you're not allowed to use mobile phones in the classroom if you work in the public sector. This is not just because someone one day woke up and they were like, I think that's wrong, that's a bad idea. No, I mean, there used to be a lot of research involved in the decision-making process of our education system. I don't know if that's still true, but there used to be a lot of research involved. And because of that, this happens. Because we tend to look at technology and see that it's innovation, and therefore it's going to perform a miracle, and our students are instantly going to learn better, faster, and they are going to become those fantastic speaking machines in just, I don't know, 15 minutes because of that app. So I want you to turn to the person sitting right next to you, and I want you to share your last experience with trying to use mobile technology in your classroom, whether it was successful or not. How did you feel about it? And why did you try it? So, questions. What was your last experience with mobile technology? Did it work or not? And why did you try it? Can you share it for a minute or two? In the classroom, in the classroom. Okay. Who would like to share an experience with us? Who would like to share an experience with us? Okay, should I try in Spanish? Sí, por supuesto. Muy bien. That's it. Stop. Buenos días. That's as far as I can go. Okay, someone.
We are creating a
However, we don't believe our public, we won't focus on that.
Why?
Especially because my children are in third grade. So I don't think it would work very well. Like using WhatsApp again, in my opinion, wouldn't work very well. But
It wouldn't. I agree with you.
actually, I've already used it. Some iPads and Google Chrome for them to search things like dictionary things or whatever, or finding games connected to the lesson.
No, definitely. They are third graders, right? So they are 7? 7. Yeah, at this age, kids, this is my personal opinion, but this personal opinion is really backed up by a lot of research. I think that kids under the age of 13 should not be allowed to use technology without supervision. Full stop. And technically speaking, Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram, whatever social network it is, kids are not allowed to have accounts. I mean, they do, but they're lying. Because when they say their birthday, if they're younger than 13, they won't be accepted, right? I find it scary that kids, 7, 8, 9-year-old kids will have Facebook accounts when they shouldn't. They are too young. They don't know how to handle if nothing else, I mean, there are those, privacy issues, etc., but I think they're not mature enough to deal with the amount of information that we handle. We don't have the maturity to handle that amount of information. I mean, look at what it did to our elections. I mean, if you were able to go through 2018 without having a single argument over politics on Facebook, please let me know how you did this, because I want to try, for the next elections. You didn't enter Facebook. I have a friend who deleted Facebook in August and only came back last week. So, because we don't have the level of maturity to let alone a kid. And WhatsApp is the same. And anything that will have encrypted communications from end to end should not be used by kids. That's too dangerous. You don't know what's happening there. Because, you know what, for kids, and it's not just for kids, I think I'm going to include myself in the group of kids. I don't think we have an offline moment anymore. People don't, it doesn't matter. I used to, in my last job, we developed a couple platforms for English language learning as a part of the curriculum of a very large institution here in São Paulo. And one of the things that we had to do was to actually manage expectations, because whenever you try and present something to students and you think that's like the best thing ever, students go like, uh-huh. Because that's what they do. We are not Google. We are not going to come up with the next, you might. And if you do, please invite me and buy me a beer. But if that's not the case, I think normally we are not going to come up with the next big technological breakthrough. So whatever you're trying to do, your students will have seen. So don't expect a moment. Because actually, technology should be invisible. You should be thinking about the lesson objectives. If you happen to use a piece of technology, whether it's Socrative, whether it's Google Docs, and students are writing their compositions online and commenting on each other's remarks, that's brilliant. But you should be focusing on the lesson objective. The lesson objective, which is, well, by the end of this lesson, students will have experienced using, I don't know, I can't think of a lesson objective right now for some reason, but your lesson objective won't change. You might have better tools, but, it should be there. Now, how do we get to not solve, but minimize this? I don't think this is very easily solved. There are lots of issues here, such as trusting students. Then again, as another anecdote, in my previous job, I was responsible for devising the digital strategy, right? And one of the things that we did, it was to create an app that was horrible, but quite effective. And it was basically a vocabulary bank. Students would create their own flashcards. And as most of the students within the institution downloaded the app and started using and building their vocabulary banks, we decided to let students use their mobile phones during the writing component of their tests. I see the despair on in your eyes right now. Ah, but wouldn't students cheat? Oh my God, yeah, maybe they could, but I tell them not to. And I trust them not to. And I, of course, supervise them, but I trust them. If I don't trust my students, then I have a problem, and it's not, you know, them, it's me. I should be dealing with other things other than technology, perhaps therapy. But yeah, I mean, we have to adapt as well. But how do we try and minimize this? Oh, I think the very first thing is that we should be focusing on this. Whatever the 4 C's. Are you familiar with them? Yes? Good. So whatever we do with technology should be focusing on critical thinking, collaboration, and communication, so that we have at the center creativity. We should be helping our students develop this, hopefully using pieces of technology. I am not going to give you a list of apps. I never did this, and I think that's cheating, because I can find a list of 25 very popular apps within 25 seconds if you use Google. The same way that you did, I mean, you could just go there and download whatever app it is for education. But you should be looking at the course book, at the syllabus, at the objectives, and perhaps you might find an app that will help you get there. But you should be making informed decisions, not using technology for the sake of technology, because it doesn't help. It destroys learning, and my timing is horrible. I always get the timing wrong. One day I'll get to do this right. Can you read this at the back? There are those uniquely human skills that must be nurtured in order to thrive in the modern workplace and beyond. With the 4 C's approach, students develop greater capacities for great resilience, empathy, altruism, and the ability to think and work with others. So this is what technology should be helping. It's not that we are using technology just for the sake of technology, and by using technology, students will get here. Quite the opposite. There is, oh yeah, okay, sorry. Makes sense? Yes, yes, no. No, you can tell me no. Comments? Hmm? It's the downside of technology, but I think also, that's a very good example. Because technology exists and it's everywhere in this room, I have 2 possible paths. I can get like, your phone rang. That's horrible, isn't it? You should feel so bad about it. Whose phone it was? Well, it was you. It was you. Who was it? But honestly, did it matter, really? I wasn't bothered. I mean, it's not the best thing, but I'm sure nobody does it on purpose. It happens. This is not, a concert hall with one single person playing one instrument. Well, I mean, I think in that case, it can really bother. But I think in most contexts, it's really okay, and I'm not really bothered by it. So it's more the approach towards the use of the tool. And I think, well, that's just a tool. Perhaps someone really wanted to talk to her, etc., and you just move on. Medicine alarm. Or the medicine alarm, yeah. There is one context in which I think it's possibly the worst thing that can happen in life. It is to have a phone ringing, right? I usually switch my phone off whenever I go to a concert hall to listen to music, because the acoustics is really good. So if you have a phone ringing, it's like an instrument, and everyone else will hear. And I always switch my phone off, as I said. But what I didn't know is that even if your phone is off and the alarm goes off, it will still ring. And it happened to me. And of course, because I didn't expect, my phone was like inside my jacket that wasn't on me. It was so disaster, very embarrassing. Very, 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 very embarrassing. Now, when we talk about trends in technology, I think you have to watch out for what's happening. And it's really important because if you don't look at trends, you will lag behind, essentially. And remember those 51% of teachers who don't get any sort of professional development related to technology? You don't want to be one of them. Because over 80% of your students will use technology, whether you help them or not. So you can either fight and say, put your phones away, or you can look at them and say, well, that's good that you're using your phone. What are you using it for exactly? Okay, so let's find a better strategy for you to use that. But you will only do that if you're able to follow trends. How do you follow trends? How many of you are on Brout? Have you heard of Brout? Brout is it's a Facebook group for language teachers. How many of you, it's free, you don't pay a cent. How many of you attend webinars on technology? More hands. Just for teacher training? Yes. Just for teacher training. There is a life outside teacher development and teacher training. There are other things. So my suggestion, my big suggestion here is look things up. Keep updated. Read what people post. Subscribe to different newsletters and podcasts so that you know what's going on. Because if you know a lot of tools, then you will be able to make better informed decisions when it comes to learning objectives. If you only know one piece of technology, then you will think that that is technology. And it's not. It's just one tool within the realm of 25 million different pieces of technology. Maybe that's more popular because that company that came up with that piece of technology or that app or that game is better at advertising, not necessarily when it comes to educating people. Does that make sense? I think that the use of technology essentially has to be user-friendly. It needs to solve a problem that you might have. Maybe you don't have that problem. If you don't have a problem, don't create one by adding new technology. It needs to be affordable enough not to exclude. Because if you're using a piece of technology that only people using a 5,000 reais smartphone can access, that's not good. I mean, unless, of course, you work at a school that will cater to that audience, which is the top 0.001% of our community. It needs to be essentially academically sound. If it's not academically sound, please don't do it. Whenever you look at an app or a new gadget or a new tool, instead of looking at it and thinking, that's interesting, how can I add it to my lesson? What should you do? Look at your lesson and think, how can I make it better? How can I make it more engaging? How can I make my students more engaged by perhaps solving a problem that I might have? If you don't have a problem, don't create one. It tends to be very effective. Guys, if you look up our website, we tend to post lots of things on technology, professional development. We have lots of courses for teachers. We have memberships. We do a lot of free stuff. We do some paid stuff. But if you keep in touch with us, if you follow us on Instagram, we tend to post things every day. You can actually follow us now if you want. That's Troika BR altogether. And we tend to, keep in touch with a lot of people. Yeah. So guys, thank you very much for being here. You will have Leticia now. I think she'll be talking about projects. She's much better than I am. So thank you for bearing with me. And hope you have a very nice event. Yeah? Thank you. Thank you.